Hey everybody, it's GobletX, and welcome back to some more Magic Arena. Today I'll be playing another Premier Draft of Dominaria United. Let's see where the cards take us today. Not a massive fan of our rare here. This can be okay if your deck is chocked full of incredibly powerful creatures, then it does become 3 mana to draw 2 cards that are guaranteed decent threats. But it's not really pack 1, pick 1 worthy in my opinion. We do have a Rada Coalition Warlord, which can be a fun build around for more aggressive domain strategies. 4 mana for a 3/3. Every time it becomes tapped, you're getting at least an additional +2/+2, because you have to have a mountain and a forest to cast Rada in most cases. And if you have a lot of land types, you can get a lot of extra damage with this card. Resolute Reinforcements is pretty sweet. All of the white decks want to make a lot of creatures, and being able to make 2 off 1 card is pretty nice. Cavalier is kind of the common version of that. Think I'm going to roll with Rada here. I'm not super confident on that. We could just roll with Reinforcements, but not the most powerful pack 1 I've ever seen. Pick 2 now. If I want to just hop in head first, just dive into the domain strategy, we can just take a Tangled Islet here, because I do think that green, blue, and red are the best cores to the domain decks. So that would be very likely to make the cut if Rada makes the cut. Even if we're not playing blue, theoretically, this still just helps make Rada get more domain, so that would be fine. Balduvian Atrocity is a really nice card, though, for aggressive strategies that have black and red. 3 mana for a 2/3 menace is not terrible. If you can kick this, though, it's a really good deal, being able to resurrect a creature from your graveyard for 1 turn, let that creature attack, and then sack it in the end step. Very good with cards like Phyrexian Rager and stuff, so I like Atrocity a lot. Soaring Drake's a solid flyer in blue. Not a huge fan of this white rare. It is good in certain matchups, but not good in everything, and for that reason, it's not very good in best of 1 because there's matchups where it doesn't really do anything. I'm just going to take the Tangled Islet there, speculating towards domain because our first card's already a great domain include, and now our next card can be another super solid card for these domain decks. Territorial Morrow has power and toughness equal to twice the number of basic land types you control. So if you happen to get all 5, this is a 5 mana 10/10, which is absolutely ridiculous, and this will definitely make the cut. So I'm going to scoop up Territorial Morrow. There is an Urg in here, which I am also a big fan of. This basically lets you scry 1 each turn and lets you sack lands in the late game to gain life. Now it is a little better than scrying 1. It lets you put those cards into your graveyard, so it works well with graveyard recursion like Urborg Repossession, and just leans into its own ability, making it have more power the later the game goes on. So Urg is a pretty sweet card too. I think probably the second best card here. And then for third, it's somewhere between Flowstone Infusion and Urborg Repossession. I think those are both great commons. But we'll go Territorial Morrow. We have an excellent start to a domain deck here. We get past the Tachiova now. A 3 mana 3/3, but you really don't want to play this until turn 6 or 7. That way, she's not going to die to any early game removal. You just drop her down, immediately play your 7th land per turn, and get at least 1 3/3 out of her. Really, really solid bomb, making sure that anything you draw late in the game is impactful. Your non-land cards, you just cast them, and your lands are now all turning into 3/3s that are flying as long as Tachiova remains on the board. Tachiova's kind of a mega bomb at uncommon. I'm really happy to see that pick 4. So we've got an excellent start towards domain now, so we want to take these dual lands really highly to where I will take it over not much. There is a Gaia's Might here, which is a very efficient combat trick the more domain you have going on, so that is a pretty sweet card, but I like to take these pretty highly, and there's nothing really else in this pack super exciting for this archetype. There are good cards for other archetypes, like Amplifier for blue-red spells, Love Song of Night and Day for white aggro, but we're not really that kind of deck. We're just going to take a Tributary and be pretty happy with it. So these are some pretty solid on-color creatures, the Coalition Warbrute, the Elfhame Worm, and the Molten Monstrosity, but when you're in the domain strategies, especially when you're in green, there are just so many good beefy creatures that they're less important to take pretty highly, so I'm going to again just take a dual land to up the domain count here over any of these solid but replaceable creatures. And the best off-color or off-archetype card is the Take Up the Shield, which is great in aggressive white decks. Huge combat trick. Okay, this pack looks really weak. We have a combat trick, but these slower domain decks don't like to play a lot of those, and if I do run one, I'll just want Gaia's Might over this. Other than that, there's like a Hurler Cyclops out of the red. Blue, green, and red are likely to be our core colors. None of these off-color cards are super great splashes. Necromass could be fine if we have a massively high creature count, but we probably won't. I think I'd take Hurler Cyclops. Again, the best cards in this pack are the Writhing Necromass and the Argivian Phalanx. They're just really not for what we're trying to do. Neither is the Hurler Cyclops, but at least it's a somewhat on-color creature. Another Gaia's Might here, a Flowstone Kavu. I haven't been super impressed by Joint Exploration, but I could be wrong about that. Maybe I'm supposed to take this more highly in this archetype when you have access to blue and green mana. Scry 2, draw a card. I guess that's pretty close to Impulse. At face value, 2 mana Scry 2, draw a card. Maybe it is better than I'm giving it credit for. We could try out Joint Exploration over Gaia's Might here, at least to give it a shot. Definitely take a Tangled Islet over very solid filler creatures like Warbrute and Badger. Although Badger is very tempting because it's just so perfectly cheap in the curve. The bigger creatures are kind of more replaceable. The 2-drops are the ones I really take highly. Badger's right in the middle of the zone there. But you need to definitely make sure we have plays early in the game, especially in this archetype when we're going to be so top-heavy on all kinds of random off-color bombs we can splash in. So I guess we take a Steel Crusher here, really late Balduvian Atrocity. Maybe I value that card a lot more than the average player, but I like it a lot. Maybe that's an overvaluation, but who knows? Well, Llanowar Stalker's not going to be good in this deck, and Smash to Dust isn't super main deckable. So I'm just going to take Urg Spawn of Turg here. I don't know if our mana is going to work out to be able to cast that, but I'll take it anyway. Wow, Molten Monstrosity and Yavimaya Sojourner. I like Yavimaya Sojourner more. It's just more consistent. Nobody's going to mess with your lands to stop you from casting a Sojourner early, but Molten Monstrosity can often get stuck in your hand if your opponent is playing a more controlling deck that's just dealing with all your creatures. So, I'm a bigger fan of the Sojourner than the Monstrosity, and that was a really, really nice final couple pickups there. We just wheel the nice late Warbrute, nice late Steel Crusher, and a Voda Sea Scavenger. These are all solid cards for this archetype. So for pack 2, we have a Wooded Ridgeline. Probably not going to take that highly. I have 4 duels now. We could take our first removal spell, which would be Bite Down. Not the greatest because we do need to have a creature on board to use it, but still pretty good. We could take a great 2-drop creature, Yavimaya Iconoclast. Like to take these super highly. They're just super efficient for that mana cost, and make sure you have early game plays. And then we could have Rulik Mons, which is more filler to me because I feel like, again, this kind of archetype just kind of clutters up with plenty of solid things to do turn 4 to 6. So I think I take Iconoclast here, but I could definitely see an argument for Bite Down because we don't have any removal yet. Okay, now we can definitely take a Bite Down. I'm not the biggest fan of Gardener because of how highly I tend to take dual lands for these kind of decks. It just feels like a Mana Dork is kind of redundant for the archetype, but it does let you play 5 mana cards a turn early. The ramp is really helpful, but the fixing you're hoping is not that important for your deck, so I think I'm taking Bite Down. Even if fixing is super important, removal is super important as well, and we don't have any of that either. So I'll take the Bite Down. Urborg Lurgoyf is the rare in this pack. We're not taking it because we're not going to have a high enough creature count to go for like the self-mill creature deck. I guess I have a really high creature count right now, but it's also pretty awkward on the colors, and it's just a slow card in general. Really would only play this in the dedicated self-mill deck, which is not what we're building right now. Great dual lands here. There's also an Extinguish the Light for more very good removal, which I could take here. Move towards Jund as the core of the deck. Green, red, and black. Splash in blue as the 4th color. See a big argument for that. I could also just take Frostfist Strider to stay Teamer, to stay blue, green, red. We really hope to wheel some of these duels, particularly the ones that include black mana, because that'll make Urg a lot more castable. And one of the reasons I'm leaning towards Extinguish the Light here is because I like Urg quite a bit, and in order to get Urg in this deck, we're going to need black to be a more heavy color. We're not going to splash for a single double black card. So picking up an Extinguished Light as one of our removal spells is going to help pivot us into focusing more on the black. So I'll take that. Now, there's a cool black rare, but it's a Cleric Tribal card that's not going to pan out for us here. Sheoldred's Restoration is a really nice late game play. It is quite slow, so we can really lose to the more aggressive archetypes. Ooh, there's actually just the perfect 5-drop red creature for this archetype. Miria's Outrider, 5 mana 4/4 reach, perfectly reasonable blocker. It's also going to deal just a ton of damage to our opponent just by entering the battlefield in the first place. Huge fan of Outrider, to where I'll take it over Sojourner or Restoration. Okay, I've got a green-red duel. I've got a Niall, which is great if you hit all 5 land types, and another Bite Down. There's also a Codex if we want to be the super slow domain deck. I think I'm going to take Niall here. Just a pretty big fan of the card. Scoop that up. And we've got Stone Cold Nothing in this pack. I guess we can take a Jaya's Fire NATO in case we end up very low on removal. That will make the cut. More likely than anything else there. Super rough stuff here again. Nothing great. For our archetype, Phalanx is pretty good, Skyrider's great, Pilfer's fine. But none of these are for us. I guess we could maybe Meteorite or maybe Steel Crusher just to have more 2-drops, but I'm not a huge fan of either. I am a big fan of Bog Badger and Mana Worker. Our mana is going to be pretty difficult in this deck. A Mana Worker could be pretty helpful. I think I'll actually scoop that up. Being able to convert 1 mana per turn into a different color is nice. I'll take a second Bite Down before I take a second Mana Worker, though. Coalition Warbrute's pretty fine. Not going to be playing any counter spells. All the duels are soaked up here, so we're in a pretty domain-heavy pod. We need to pick more dual lands incredibly highly pack 3, and it may have been a mistake letting some of them pass us by here. Whole lot of nothing for our deck. And these final picks. I'll rare draft here. Somebody's going to be pretty happy about that timely interference if they're a blue deck with a lot of creatures on the ground. Okay, so we've opened up 0 dual lands here, so we don't have to just scoop up a duel, which means we're pretty open to just take the Cruelty of Gix. This is a pretty absurd card. There are positions where this won't be very good. If your opponent is just beating you up, you're going to have to immediately just skip over to Chapter 3 and get a creature on the board. But if you're in a more grindy game, if you're already locked up on the board, this card's incredible. Make your opponent discard the best card in their hand, tutor out the best card in your deck, and then get the best card from any graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. Cruelty of Gix is great. I'm already trying to up the black count with Urg and Extinguish the Light. Let's go for it. Bortuck Bone Rattle, another absolutely phenomenal card for these domain decks. I think it's better than Leyline Binding in limited. Leyline Binding, great removal. Very cheap way to deal with 1 card, but Bortuck Bone Rattle is such a huge 2-for-1. It's just absolutely phenomenal in limited. 6 mana for a 4/4, and you basically return any creature from your graveyard to the battlefield in these domain decks. My fingers are really crossed, though, that we've actually opened up some dual lands in at least one of these packs. This is brutal. We are in a draft pod full of nothing but domain players. It really didn't feel like it pack 1 when we get past Maro and Techyova and stuff. But that's just how drafts can go. Sometimes people will swap archetypes in pack 2, and you'll get punished. So, 0 duels, domain deck it is. Strength of the Coalition is fine, Rona's Vortex is fine. Probably take Rona's Vortex for more interaction, but it'll be pretty hard to cast with how our mana is. Not much we can do about that at this point. I should have taken probably a land over Niall. Maybe even a land over the Extinguish last pack. Alright, we have to take these lands. I'm not really even going to look at the rest. I guess Vine Shaper Prodigy is the best non-land card here. We definitely need more black sources for these double black cards. I'll take the black-red duel over the blue-red duel here. Come on in. It's really hard to say in Dominaria as well. I really like the draft formats where they put like one non-basic in every pack, so you like really know how to read if snow is going to be open or not. Like back in Call Time, they did that. And Dominaria, they didn't do that at all. It's really like you can open a pack with 0 duels, you can open a pack with like 5 duels. It's kind of ridiculous. I'm not a huge fan of that, but it does add more variety, more intrigue. Doesn't I don't think I'm playing any of these cards. Doesn't necessarily mean domain is open or not open when dual lands don't show up. But pretty sure, like, when we don't wheel the dual lands in pack 2, we knew domain was not very open. But yeah, it just makes it a lot harder to read the signals. Because, like, look, we're getting all the dual lands now. We just weren't wheeling any dual lands last pack. So, I mean, I guess this is fine. I'm taking over Shieldred's Restoration, but again, I want a million duels, so I'm gonna do that. Phyrexian Rager, black is one of the core colors here, so scoop that up. And now I just feel comfortable. Now I feel like I was fine and I shouldn't have been worried at all. But the signals were really, really bad for us in the first half of this pack. Just 0 duels. I don't think we're playing any of these. Wrath is pretty unlikely. Meteorite's pretty unlikely. I'll just rare draft a Wrath anyway. Another Mana Worker could happen. Scoop that up. Another Bog Badger can definitely happen. Pretty hard to kick the strength of the Coalition. I don't have any straight up white cards in the deck. Got 2 white sources and I'm not going to add any more. Yeah, I'll take a Bog Badger. Strength of the Coalition is very good if you can consistently kick it, but we're not a deck that can. Broken Wings to the sideboard, Llanowar Stalker to the sideboard, and really took us for a bit of a stressful ride there that last the second half of pack 2 and the first half of pack 3, but then we kind of got there. We actually got past a bunch of packs where people did open up dual lands in the very end, so that was sweet. Alright, so we get to cut 5 cards out of this deck, and it's currently at 20 creatures and 8 non-creatures. Kind of a high creature count. Again, the very general, very basic limited guideline is somewhere around 14 to 18, 15 to 17, somewhere right in there. For a very simple, very basic, creature-heavy limited deck, like most are. So we could cut up to 5 creatures out of here if we really want to, pretty easily. And I might do that. Cut as much blue as I can. Probably Cutting Joint Exploration, just so blue is like purely a splash for the removal spell and the 2 blue bombs. We have 3 blue dual lands, that's 3 blue sources. Even if I don't run a straight up island, do I have anything that tutors out a basic land? Because if I cut these 2 blue cards, I might not even need to run an island in the deck. Yeah, I have no way to tutor out basics, so I could just run 3 blue sources for the 3 blue cards, because all 3 of them are still going to be strong late game. A very good piece of interaction, a very big bomb that we're not playing until turn 7 generally anyway. Then Niall's the only one that is probably better the earlier you cast her, but yeah, we could maybe cut an island here if we cut all those, so let's do that. Again, I'm probably cutting this meteorite, although it could be nice in here. Yeah, it's probably not worth it. We've got double Mana Worker. Cut Snare Spinner. I've already got plenty of 2 mana 1/3s with the double Mana Worker. Probably Hurler Cyclops. A little bit of a difficult mana cost, double red there, and we don't really have a ton of expendable creatures, so we're not getting that much value from the activated ability on this. It's kind of just a mildly hard to cast 5 mana 5/4 for our deck. So I think cutting Snare Spinner Hurler Cyclops would be fine. And then we could just kind of keep the Meteorite in if we want, or we could run 18 lands, which when you look at our curve is like, actually seems kind of reasonable here. We have a lot of cards that are going to want us to have a ton of lands, because we just have a lot of high mana cost cards. We also have cards like Urg that want to mill a bunch of lands, sack a bunch of lands. Yep, the final change to this deck is maybe we cut Meteorite for a basic. That is the last thing in question. Everything else, pretty sure it just sticks in. Let's see what our colors look like here. 11 green cards, 6 red cards, 5 black cards, and 3 blue. So green sources, #1 by a lot. Want to have 8 or 9 of those. We currently have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Let's slap in another forest and cut the island for now, so that we can hit our 8 green sources. 1 out of every 5 cards being a green source. It's where I like to be with my #1 color. It's ideally at least 8, sometimes 9. And then secondary colors, black and red, are pretty much tied because we have double black cards. We have 3 double black cards, but we have more red cards in general, but none of them require double red. So probably want around the same red and black, maybe a tiny bit more black because of 3 different double black cards being in here. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 red. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 black. So we currently have 1 more black source than red source, which I think is exactly how we want it to be. And then we have 3 blue sources, which may be a tiny bit low for our 3 blue cards, but it's not bad. So if we do cut meteorite, we're going to cut meteorite to put in either a 9th island, a 9th forest, or a 1st island. So a 9th green source or a 4th blue source is what it would be. Again, I have 3 lands that are blue sources. I have 2 mana workers to convert mana. And I have 1 meteorite. I feel like the mana's fine. I think I'm gonna run the meteorite in here. If it plays super atrociously, I'll go ahead and cut it for a basic land. You know what? The fact that it's a mana rock that costs 5 mana, it's a removal spell and a mana rock, so it is doing 2 things at once, but the games where this card's downside come into play are going to feel so bad. Like, it's going to be so painful when we have 4 lands, a Territorial Marrow, a Bortuk Bone Rattle, a Tachiova, and a Meteorite in hand, and we're just staring at that Meteorite like, what are you doing? Games like that, obviously Meteorite would be better to just be a basic land. But that's not every game. That's not how we're going to draw it every game. I don't know. I think the mana costs are high enough. We want to really hit every land drop all the way up to 5 mana plus. I'm going to just cut Meteorite for the 18th land. I think I'm going to go for 1 island here. Or I could put in another mountain or swamp. Because again, 3 double black cards, only 6 black sources right now. But I also only have 5 red sources for my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 red cards. 5 red sources, that's still about 1 out of every 8 lands. Or 1 out of every 8 cards, period. Which is kind of perfect. Turn 2 is when we'll see our 8th card that we've drawn for Steel Crusher. 6 out of 40, what is that? If it was a 42 card deck, it would be 1 out of every 7. So it is a very, very slightly higher than 1 out of every 7 cards is a swamp. I think I'm actually going to add another swamp. Because that makes it, if it's just a little bit above 1 out of every 7, it's very possible we don't hit our second black until like, I mean, you start with 7 cards in hand, then you'll have drawn 7 more by turn 7. So we could just be waiting on our double black on average until our 7th card drawn, our 7th turn, which makes Urg way worse. Extinguish a good bit worse. Cruelty also a lot worse when you can't drop it on turn 5. So I think I want to up that black count to now we have 7 black sources for those double black costs. And then now I will finally call it a mana base, call it a deck, and get into the gameplay. Alright, here we are on the play in round 1 with relatively excellent mana. We have every color except for blue. We do have a blue card in hand, Niall, but that's one of those cards that can wait till later in the game. We've got a turn 3 Phyrexian Rager to help hit some more lands, and Yavimaya Sojourner is going to be pretty dang cheap here, 4 mana for a 4/6. So pretty happy with how this game is looking to start. The opponent does not Essence Scatter our Phyrexian Rager, and we've drawn the Molten Tributary, which is the perfect draw here. Not only is this the blue source to help get our Niall down, but it's going to reduce Yavimaya Sojourner's cost to be able to slam that down this turn as well. Now, I could have played Iconoclast to play around Scatter here, I guess. I could be wrong, but I would guess my opponent would have scattered a Phyrexian Rager. Okay, so it wasn't Scatter, it was Protect the Negotiators, which explains that greatly. They could have cast a Protect the Negotiators on our Phyrexian Rager, but with no creatures on board, it wouldn't have done anything. So that is why I was holding for them last turn. They had a Protect the Negotiators that they couldn't actually do anything with, but Arena was going to give them the option to. I think we drop a Niall now. I could get aggressive and haste out an Iconoclast, but I think I'd rather potentially start drawing cards with this, if it's possible. Could trade into the Prodigy, that's fine. Don't see a huge reason to go for it immediately though. Frostfist Strider gonna be annoying, gonna take a little while to get Niall attacking now. Guess I am pretty fine with this trade. So if I kick an Iconoclast, it is 4 power, which means it gets to attack in this turn. I don't have the mana to kick it and pay for a ward on a Frostfist Strider, so I think I just kind of want to wait a turn. Although I could just kick it and attack in, and just trade for the Strider. Yeah, I guess we do that, because otherwise not exactly doing anything this turn. No trade. I think I'm going to play the Tangled Islet to guarantee that I can cast a Fire's NATO and pay the ward cost. Safer to just play the Forest so I can hold up Bite down. But then, obviously I don't have a creature big enough to bite down the Strider. So I'll have to Fire NATO if I want to get it off the board. So Green Widow's annoying. Could be worth Fire NATOing Green Widow, since that is my sorcery speed removal and it allows me to keep my instant speed 1 up if something weird happens. But then I don't have a removal spell big enough to kill Strider. Guess I'm supposed to bite down the Green Widow. I don't like how bite down plays against open mana. If my opponent has instant speed removal to kill my Iconoclast in response to my bite down, that'll be pretty painful, but we'll see. Yep, that does suck. At least I got them to not be able to kick that. Looks like Fire NATO would have played better. Okay, well it just wouldn't have mattered at all. I guess I can go screw myself. Looks like we've got no shot this game then. They have all of the interaction and Batachova when they have the 7th land. Yep. Not too much to say here. Opponent has every piece of interaction for all our removal to just completely shut off our game plan. Definitely happens. absolutely nothing we could have done differently in a game like this. I guess I get to hit my opponent since they attacked me with that. I'm already well over lethal on board, so I might as well see what we're drawing. Morrow, not going to do it. One blocker against this horde. Block for 7, yeah. Super dead. I guess if I knew exactly what was in my opponent's hand, it would have been incredibly difficult to play around exactly shore up and strength of the coalition. But if I did know exactly what was in my opponent's hand, I guess theoretically, my initial plan was to fire NATO first. I don't remember what pulled me off that plan. I think it was just the fact that Fire NATO could kill more creatures later. Fire NATOing first would have kept us in that game a little longer. Don't think we end up winning because my opponent had Tachiyova, but if I fired NATO'd first, they would have attempted to cast Shore Up in response, and we could have responded to Shore Up with Bite Down. Actually, no, yeah, literally it didn't matter, because then when I respond to the Shore Up with the Bite Down, then they respond to the Bite Down with Strength of the Coalition, and the exact same thing happens. Yeah, okay, no, I was correct initially, it just didn't matter. Do have a Morrow on 5. We have Rona's Vortex as an unsummon, return a creature to hand to slow this game down. Definitely need to hit a black source, but we're running 7 in the deck. 6 minimum. I think we're running 7 in here. Still be a bold keep. Yeah, we're running 7. I think I am going to mulligan. This is probably worse. These are basically both very late game plays, but gonna keep it anyway. Hopefully Mana Worker all the way to victory. Got a Rager on 3 if I hit 1 land. I think I can afford the mold to 5. Guess I should have kept the initial 7 in hindsight. But definitely a close one when we don't know what hand's coming next. We don't know what draws are coming next either. Yep, we're gonna get punished. Come on down, Iconoclast. Opponent's got Phyrexian Rager on 3. Seems good. We are still stuck on 2 lands. I am running the 18 land version of this deck. I went with that over the Meteorite. That is worth mentioning. Opponents in the think tank here. The world is their oyster. They've hit every land drop. They have double white. They have double black. 3 colors available. Shield Wall, Sentinel into Wingmantle Chaplain. I would just scoop right now. If it weren't a video, most likely. Highest win rate card in the entire set. Creating a 1/1 bird for each defender on their board, and doing it again every time they play another defender from that point on. So you just lock down the ground with defenders, and kill your opponent in the sky with flyers. And they're sacking the Wingmantle Chaplain, which means that their plan is probably going to be to return that from the grave to their hand or to the battlefield, so they can get more birds. So I can cast anything here thanks to Mana Worker being the second green for Tachiyova. We have all but 1 for Domain, so Morrow's an 8/8. Could Fire NATO the Braids. I forgot I don't have to sacrifice something. I could have lost 2 life and let them draw a card. I think sacking Phyrexian Rager was worth not letting them draw a card, and I think I'm just going to kill Braids. But you're not very good right now. I need to hit a lot of lands. I need to hit land 6. I need to hit land 7. Karn. Karn's relatively weak by Planeswalker standards, but still a very good card draw engine if you can protect your board state, lock it up, and just sit there using the -1 over and over. You get to like impulse every turn. Keep drawing cards out of your library, digging things out. So still pretty threatening here. We did not hit another land, so we'll just probably drop Morrow. Pass. So Karn is just straight up -1 draw card at this point because they have the Power Stone that can't do anything else.
The Thran still have secrets to uncover.
From this point on, Karn is -1 draw a card out of your top 2. So now it's selective card draw now that they've made another Power Stone. So this is how Karn's pretty good if you lock up the board state. Get those Power Stones, use those Power Stones to draw a lot of cards. You could use them as a win condition as well. You do get an emblem, which works as well. This format is just slow and board state grindy enough that Karn just plays fine. Bite Down was actually a good draw. That's just about the only non-land card I would want to draw at this point. I think we have to kill Karn, but we still have the same problem where I'm just gonna die to these flyers.
Our loss is Phyrexia's victory.
There's only 2 creatures attacking me on the ground. Sure, I'll send Morrow in. Throw the Badger on the Vanguard. These can pay for any abilities? Yes, they can pay for anything except non-artifact spells, so they can actually pay for Charismatic Vanguard's ability. And they have the Runic Shot for Territorial Morrow, so that is a very dead Morrow. Deathbloom Gardener. About the 6th land now. If I play Tachyova and I top deck a land, I can play a land, make it a creature next turn, and still play Bone Rattle with all my mana. Get back the Morrow or something. Probably better than playing Warbrute here. Just on the off chance we hit another land next turn. I don't have the white source yet, so Bone Rattle can't actually bring back Morrow, but it can bring back Rager or Iconoclast. You can put Morrow in our hand. I might even just hold on to Bone Rattle to protect Tachyova, because if we can keep Tachyova on this board state, we do still have a shot. If their hand isn't good, making a 3/3 flyer every time we play a land can pretty quickly get us to where we can at least block everything they're doing, and then start turning the other corner after we have a few of those flyers. But we don't know what's in their hand, and I don't think they've been playing any lands either, so... Yep, kicked Phyrexian Espionage, that's not good for us. We do hit the land for Tachyova. Do I just drop Bone Rattle or save Bone Rattle to save Tachyova? Bone Rattle gets Rager or Iconoclast. I feel like I have to save Bone Rattle to save Tachyova. This could play just as poorly as it could well. If my opponent has Phyrexian Espionage in their hand, it's going to play poorly, because they're going to make me discard Bone Rattle. If my opponent has Exile removal, it plays poorly. But if they have Extinguish the Light or Bite Down, something that just kills a creature, then it'll play well. I don't know, there's a lot that can go wrong. Just holding Bone Rattle. I'm just gonna go for the Phyrexian Rager. Another land for Techova. Fingers crossed, not destroy target creature kind of removal spell. Not a removal spell that puts Techova in our grave. If it's a removal spell and it exiles Techova, we're probably dead, but at least don't have to feel bad about just running out Bone Rattle, trying to dig into more outs. Alright. Extinguish the light, that's definitely a thing. We might be able to start turning the corner here soon. Attack with a 4/4. Plenty of blockers on the ground, so I think that's fine. They could block with Vanguard and buff it, but then Vanguard is gone. I guess they could double block and try to buff, and then we could extinguish the light to get 2 of their creatures off the board. I kind of feel like I have to extinguish light as Vanguard before I really get into any combat. They actually don't even have to buff to double block Bone Rattle. They can block with a 2/3 and a 2/2 without buffing them. I don't know, Bone Rattle's not really doing anything on our board anyway, but a 1-for-1 trade into a smaller creature doesn't feel great. But Extinguish the Light can make sure that doesn't happen, so you know what, sure. I'm just gonna chump with Vine Wall, fine. That is pretty ideal, that's the kind of thing I'd want to happen, just whittle down the board state. We're definitely killing their Charismatic Vanguard in their end step. Unless that happens, then they get to keep Charismatic Vanguard. So we've countered their bite down by destroying the creature they were using to bite with. So now we get to keep Techova out. Now, okay, bounce Techova to hand so they can attack with all the flyers this turn. If they play, they can buff them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They can do 7 damage there. Is the plan a counterspell for Techova? There is stone cold nothing I can do about that. It must be, and now we're just doomed. Yep, there's literally nothing I can do about that, so we just run out the Techova and hope that's not what this is. Okay. I guess it's not what that is. I think we just pass this turn. We really need to deal with Charismatic Vanguard. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. They have enough mana to pump with Vanguard twice. Double pump makes the 1/1s big enough to kill the lands. If they have a trick in hand, it's just gonna get us regardless. They can make this Drake a 4/5 maximum. And then we take 6 from the birds, and we only lose 1 land. Perfect draw. Genuinely great draw. We need 2 blockers on the ground. We're gonna play a Sojourner here. We don't have the mana to buff right now. Send that in. I'm really surprised they have Wingmantle Chaplain. I've seen 2 other defenders. I'm sorry, I'm still bugging out that this is still that same game. So we bite down the Vanguard here. They have 4 blockers. 1, 2, 3, 4. Take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Not quite lethal. Well, let's bite down the Vanguard. They have double pump, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That's a double pump. That's it. This would be the hardest one for them to kill, so we'll use that one to bite down the Vanguard. They don't have triple pump, right? Yeah, they don't have triple pump. Okay. Just using that for blocks here. 11 life with 3 blockers. They're just going to scoop them up for us. They don't have to consider whether or not I'm supposed to play around a trick in their hand. I don't know what they could have here that would save them. So they go block, block, block. Take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Exact lethal. With 2 mana up. If they had the trick that's like put a +1/+1 counter on their creature, give it lifelink indestructible, that would be devastating for us. Because they'd gain like 5 life off of Vine Shaper Prodigy. So they wouldn't even have to block with everybody. It would still be hard for them to crack back for lethal though, so I think probably I would end up going with the attack. Regardless. I really didn't think we were going to win that one. We had a really, really slow start up there. Opponent had a lot of good, just good stuff in their deck in general. Here we are in game 3, all tap lands all day, just the way I like it. This Outrider is going to have a swell time. The only color we're missing is blue. Doing great on green mana. Doing great on white mana as well, but that is less important. Turn 2 from our opponent, they've got a Tangled Islet and a Mountain. They're going to play their own mana worker. Got a Phyrexian Rager. I think I'd rather Phyrexian Rager on 3 than play a 2-drop on 2. Although I could play Iconoclast, which is a pretty big 2-drop to play on 2. And then I can still play Steel Crusher the turn after. You know what? Yeah, let's get potentially attacking here. I'm not going to miss a land drop by not playing Rager. I've got 4 already. Vine Shaper Prodigy, unkicked. You love to see it. Well, now I can just Rager this turn. Can also Steel Crusher. Could bite down the Prodigy. Just to be getting in with the Iconoclast. That feels unnecessary. Could bite down the Mana Worker just to kill both their creatures. If they go for a block. They're down pretty low on cards in hand. This feels weird, but might be worth it. Probably not, but it might be. So whatever, let's just do a weird play. Let's get funky fresh with it today. So feel like I've got great value throughout this game. Oops. Opponent has great value too. Sprouting Goblin. Pulling out any dual land from their deck, putting it directly in hand. Just kind of solves their mana issues that they may have had by us killing mana workers, so we do not like to see that after we bit down. But we've got a second bite down, so it's all okay. Now I don't have to feel like I wasted a bite down, which I very well did. Scout the wilderness for the island here. So they have 3 blue sources now and 3 green sources. For the trade here, we've got a bone rattle coming up. Still no blue source, so Outrider isn't for 5 damage, but it's still chunky. Still a good one. Got a very nice looking bone rattle for next turn. Picks up an iconoclast at least. Territorial Marrow. That is quite large. Can 2-for-1 myself to kill that, which might be one of my only ways to kill it in this deck. I've got 1 Extinguish the Light, 1 Rona's Vortex, but I don't have a blue source yet. Kind of down for the 2-for-1. Because then I can Bone Rattle an Outrider back to the board, which is disgusting. If I get a blue source. If I don't get a blue source, I'll just Bone Rattle the Outrider back to hand, which is still good. There's no 1 red mana card that's going to add any toughness here. There's the +2/-2 card, but that won't do anything. Djinn of the Fountain. Big flyer. Big flyer is big. We're going to Bone Rattle back our Outrider. It's enlist for now. Trade into the Goblin it is. Miria's Outrider to hand. Petchova. Uncool. Very uncool. And Neshoba Brawler. Getting aggro with it. They're getting jiggy with it. There's the blue source. I guess we get to do 5 damage off this Outrider, which is kind of cool. Trade into the Brawler on attacks. 8 life here. But we're at 12, and if I attack in and they don't block, they go to 4 and I have 2 blockers up. I use 1 to block Djinn of the Fountain. I use 1 to chump block Neshoba Brawler, and I still take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 from Trample, 6, 7, 8 from Petchova, and potentially 3 more from another land go to 1 life. A little bit too many ways for them to crack back well for me to just swing here. Well, they drew an instant or sorcery for the Djinn, potentially. If they did, I'm flat out dead. If they didn't, they could just be trying to clear out the Outrider for all the 3/3 lands, which is still a good play. And we don't really have a good block. We don't really have a good line. Both of these lines are bad for us. Just figure out which is the least worse. If I don't block this thing, they pretty much guarantee to have mega lethal next turn, so we'll do that. Cruelty of Gix. That's actually pretty large right now. I tutor my deck for anything. Can I find something that wins? No, I don't have another Miria's Outrider. If I had another Miria's Outrider, that'd be sick. I could grab Petchova. Black, black. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have exactly enough to grab my own Techova? Wait a second. Grab my own Techova, then reanimate a Mirror's Outrider? And that should probably win the game in 2 turns. I think that's our best bet. All of our removal costs more than 3 mana, but I guess I could grab a removal spell, play this, and then Vortex Techova. I feel like getting my own Techova is better. Next turn, I am reanimating a Miria's Outrider, putting them to 3 life. Uh-oh. When do they get off of Impulse? What is the top deck? Could reanimate their creature against them as well, if I want to take a Morrow, but almost certainly taking a Miria's Outrider. This is really big stuff from Cruelty of Gix. Huge draw last turn, huge top deck. There's a lot of things that can pretty much immediately kill us here still, though. This Impulse can very much find the win. Rith! Not at all what I was expecting, but quite potentially on the list of things that can just kind of kill us here. So now I need to make sure my board state is much wider than my opponent's to kill them. And I'm only going to have 2 flying blockers, because I did not draw land, I drew a Morrow. Okay. Pretty much a certainty. I'm just taking the Outrider. Tied for the biggest flying blocker, and it does 5 to my opponent's face. Making it so if I can just get to a board state with just 2 more creatures than my opponent, I guaranteed win, or if I can get to 1 more flyer than my opponent, I win as well. And Morrow's not a bad draw there. We can just start throwing an angry 10-10 at their face every turn, because it's not really blocking anything we don't already have blocked in several other ways. Force them to start sacking a creature every turn, basically. If they draw a combat trick to use with this Rith, though, the game is certainly over. Because if Rith is still on the board after one of our creatures is dealt excess damage and dies, then they're just getting 4/4 flyers and we're not coming back. Hydromancer was a good draw for sure. Niall was a decent draw for us. Actually, literally land would be better than Niall, but I'll take it. 3/3 is better on this board than a 2/4. Do I still attack with Morrow now that they have 2 brawlers? How do they kill a 10-10? They can block it with 3 toughness creatures. I'm killing 3 things if they're killing Territorial Morrow. I'm going to have 3 blockers on the ground still against their 1, 2, 3, 4 ground attackers. I think we are sending in Morrow. And I guess they could go Rith and 2 3 toughness creatures. Alright, yeah, we're killing 3 creatures here. This is going to put a big start towards just having a larger board state than my opponent. We have 5, they have 4, now we have 6 and they have 4. If they draw dead, we're good, but if they draw land, that's still not drawing dead, because Techova is a very good card. If we draw land, we're immediately winning. We didn't draw land. Yeah, land would be lethal immediately. We got Warbrute instead. This is still fine. Seven creatures to 5 from our opponent. 7 creatures to 6. Alright, top deck any land in the deck and we've got lethal. Bog Badger works too. Bog Badger really does it. Bog Badger off the top has won so many games. And it's a 3-mana 3/3 on curve. How can you not love our good old Badger friend? Garbage Andy's preview card, a very sweet one. Oh, Bog Badger, the homie, showing up right on time. 2 and 1. We've got our main Jund mana this game. I need a blue source pretty badly. I am on the draw here with a turn 3 play at least. I'm gonna keep this one. Not super happy with it, but Mana Worker pretty much solves everything. If the Mana Worker does not get blown up. Our opponent is on blue, white, and red, as far as we know. And drop the Mana Worker here. Actually, probably would have been better to just play Radiant Grove. Just playing a 3/3 turn 3 and then a 3/4 trample turn 4 is a pretty nasty start to the game, so probably should have just kept all my untapped lands to know that I can do that. I mean, I do like getting the Mana Worker out so that I know I can have the blue mana up on turn 4 for either of these cards, but I actually think our just straight up Jund curve is better, our green and red cards. Pixie Illusionist, so opponent's mana is going to be whatever they need it to be now. Yeah, potentially miss a 4-drop here. Just play the Badger, I think. Yeah, I would rather just get a 3/3 out immediately. Make it easier to keep attacking. Or at least get attacking in the first place. And this way, if I hit an untapped land, I can go tapped land turn 4 and then Morrow on 5. Rulik Mons. We do hit the untapped land. I could play a card here. I could also just Vortex the Rulik Mons away. Kind of want to do. It's a pretty nice ability, letting them get lands off the top or get goblins. I'll offer the trade first. I'll miss out on 1 point of damage to potentially just trade Badger into this. Looks like that is not going to happen. So we'll put the Rulik Mons on the bottom of their library. Just get it out of here. No turn 5 Morrow for us anymore, but we can just play Niall next turn instead. Gibbering Barricade, that shuts off 3/3s. Sad day for the Bog Badger. Missing a blue source, but Niall will still set up our draws by scrying 4. So I think she's still a very solid play here. The Warbrutes are very solid as well. I mean, just getting a big trampler down. Warbrute with a Morrow backup as well is kind of sick. Fire NATO the Niall. That's alright, we got plenty other threats between these Warbrutes and the Morrow. Warbrute is still pretty nasty on this board, and I'd rather draw their removal for our weaker creatures first, so I think I'm just going to keep running out Warbrutes. When we have a Bone Rattle coming up, though, that could bring back Morrow. Yeah. I mean, playing Morrow would be pretty fine here, but I think Warbrute is essentially just as impactful. We're basically attacking with a 6-4 trample every turn instead of an 8-8. But a 6-4 trample is still absolutely ridiculous. This might be no removal here. Maybe they just trade an IL for a Warbrute. We'll find out. Could be Artillery Blast. Battle Rage Blessing, that works too. It is removal. We've gotten that out of the way for Morrow. They have one card left in hand. We know it can't be a counterspell because they're tapped out. I'm actually pretty chill to just play Morrow now. Hopefully we've worked through the removal. Got rid of Fire NATO Battle Rage Blessing. Another green source. They need double green. Tachova. How many Tachovas am I going to play against today? I mean, I'm playing with a Tachova, so it's a little hypocritical, but it is really annoying to play against the same thing over and over and over again. Part of why I play draft instead of constructed is for variety. Yep, and of course their Niall's popping off. All kinds of uncool. Bone Rattle back the Warbrute or my own Niall. I think we get our own Niall here. They're down to 6. They are planning to kill me in the sky, and hopefully it won't work, because we'll have a flying blocker. Warbrute would have been fine here too, but then I'm just like conceding the sky to my opponent and guaranteeing that I take at least 9 damage in the sky, go down to 4. Warbrute would attack super well. Wow, they've got a Tear Asunder anyway. So I guess we are taking up to 9 in the sky. Yep, so anything we recurred to Bone Rattle would just get torn asunder. 8 life to 6. Niall, of course, popping off. Drawing their best card out of their top 5 every turn. They've basically tutored their library. At this point, they've dug 10 cards deep out of like 20. And they've got a Llanowar Green Widow. Seems good. I'm just dead in the sky. Unless I Rager into something. Mega dead. Here we are on the play now in game 5. Keep this hand. We have a Cruelty of Gix on turn 6. That'll be sweet. We don't have the red mana, but we've got an incredible bomb late game. And we have the mana for literally every other card in our deck. The mana for everything except our red cards. So I'm not going to pass up this Cruelty of Gix. Like 75% of our draws are great. Because any red lands or non-red cards are all great draws. And we did hit a red source immediately, which is nice. Now we can just drop a Steel Crusher. Offer trades with the Banalish Sleeper. And the trade is accepted. For 3 mana, our opponent's going to play a Phyrexian Rager now. We will play a Coalition Warbrute. Should block that all day. Cruelty of Gix next turn is going to be sweet because we get to get the maximum value off of it, force our opponent to discard a card, then grab our best card, and then resurrect something from grave. Prayer of Binding. Goodbye, Coalition Warbrute. And welcome to my face, Phyrexian Rager. Let's see what our opponent's playing with here. Braids, land, Braids, Frightful Return. Opponent is about to get the flavor win here as they Braids Frightful Return to return Braids from their graveyard to their hand. Probably pull out Techova on this Cruelty of Gix. Well, it looks like our opponent has no removal. Could be Morrow too. That's pretty fine. They're going to do the full 3-mode thing. I guess I discard... I kind of want to discard Warbrute, because I kind of want to pick up Techova and then drop Rager and Techova in one turn. If I can, and it looks like I can. I'm not certain here. We'll find out. Let's see. Yes, I can. Now, even if they kill Techova, I'll just put her back on the board. If they don't exile her. So, Braids Frightful Return does get the flavor win. They are going to return Braids, Arisen Nightmare. They can sack an artifact, creature, enchantment, land, or planeswalker. If they do, I may sack a permanent that shows type. If I don't, they're going to draw a card. They're going to sack a land. Alright, draw your card. Pick up a Phyrexian Rager. Could pick up their Sleeper. I can't kick it though, because you have to kick on casting. Yeah. If I could kick that, then I might pick that up. So, Warbrute or Phyrexian Rager here? Probably Warbrute. We're just trying to kill our opponent as quickly as possible at this rate. I shouldn't have let the auto-tapper cast the Iconoclast, because I should have left a basic land untapped so I wouldn't have to animate one of my lands here. I think I'll sack Rager. It can't attack into Braids anyway. Opponent has drawn a lot of cards here. They only really need a couple pieces of removal to make my board state crumble. One piece of removal alleviates the pressure on them by quite a bit. Just blow up Techova and you're not in that horrible of a position anymore. They do not have any removal yet, though. I will sack a land this time, because I'll still have 7 playing my next land. Alright, they scoop them up. That is going to be game. Unfortunately, they did not draw any removal with all that card draw. Unlucky stuff for them, but that is going to put us to 3-2, at least a 50-50 win rate here. I will absolutely take it. Another Cruelty of Gix hand here. If my opponent's aggressive at all, we are going to die. But I have more green sources in this deck than any other. And if I hit one by turn 3, I get to play this Badger. I'm on the draw to do so. No matter what, I have Warbrute on 4. Bit greedy, but we're going for it, and never punished. Forest in the hand. Yavimaya Steel Crusher turn 2 from our opponent though, and once again, never punished. We'll just get our own. So we can block all their early game plays until we get to this Cruelty of Gix. Try to take over the game with that. Raven, man, that's not good. And Flowstone Infusion. Uh-oh, this deck is really aggressive. Really low to the ground. This could be a huge problem. Should have played my swamp there, because I'm going to want both these swamps on the board. So that would have given me some room to play a tap land if I drew one. But now I have to just go swamp these next 2 turns. Goodbye, Rada. Because I have to go swamp here, I'm just discarding a Fire Nado. But at least our opponent didn't have anything else to do that turn. They just make a 1/1, make us discard a card. And we can definitely make up for all the discard this will have. Wow, when we make them discard a card, they also get a bird. That's stupid. That's so dumb. That's pretty frustrating in a limited environment. And it's like, even if I make them discard cards, they get a bird. Because it's at the beginning of each end step if a player discarded a card. Now I draw the Bite down. I don't get to cast Cruelty of Gix if I play the Bite down here. But Raven Man is a little jerkwad, so I'm probably going to cast Bite down anyway. Is it right to Cruelty of Gix or Bite down? If I Cruelty of Gix on 1, I'm giving them a bird when I make them discard. But if I wait on the Cruelty of Gix, they might not have anything to discard next turn anyway. And then I won't have a Bite down to kill any flyers if that ends up mattering. I could Cruelty of Gix and just skip to Chapter 2. Could Cruelty of Gix skip to 3, but that's pretty bad right now. I feel like I just Bite down. We'll see how it plays out for us, but I feel like that's what I do. I'm going to play around them making us discard 2. I couldn't imagine them having something else that makes us discard a single card right now. But I know there's a common that makes us discard 2, which would get us either way. So I'm going to play the swamp there. That way if they do have the 1 card that would make us discard Cruelty of Gix, at least we won't have to discard that and a swamp. Get 2 Amplifier and a Vanquisher's Axe. That is all A-okay. So this is going to be painful here, but I'm at 15, so I think I can let it be painful. Ooh, especially when I draw into Extinguish the Light. That can gain me some life and kill a card. So let's see what's in their hand. Fingers crossed, not a land. Creature or Planeswalker. Creature, Planeswalker. Creature, Planeswalker. It's a creature. It's a Miria's Outrider. That's a big one. That is a excellent one. Now that's what we're going to reanimate. Now do I attack in and trade a Warbrute into this Death Toucher, or do I just wait for Extinguish the Light? I can attack Badger into it and then wait for Extinguish the Light. Next turn I'm pulling anything out of my deck, and I don't think we're grabbing Tachiova here. What's in our deck? We've got an Urg, a Coalition Warbrutes. 5 mana, I could play my own Miria's Outrider. Lock the birds. I think we're grabbing Miria's Outrider next turn, which means I'm going to want to cast that instead of Extinguish the Light, so I think I actually just offer the trades here. Get this thing out of the way. Okay. This is pretty solid. Just get everything off the board. Take over the game with just double Miria's Outrider from Cruelty of Gix. If I draw a white source, it'll also just straight up lethal them. Down to 10. Not a white source, but we're still definitely on Miria's Outrider. Ooh, we could be on Bortuk though. But I can't cast it this turn, so I don't think we can be on Bortuk. I mean, I guess I get to kill that and gain 3. But Bortuk doesn't bring back Miria's Outrider because there's no Miria's Outrider in my grave. I think I'm just casting Miria's Outrider and then resurrecting Miria's Outrider. I think that's what we're doing here. On board, I'm taking 2 damage this turn. Then I extinguish the light and just kill them next turn. Unless they drew very well. If they drew dead, then we just pick up a Miria's Outrider and extinguish the light, their 1 blocker, and kill them. If they have any combat trick here, we're dead either way because their 1/3 damage creature gets through. That is so frustrating, are you kidding me? I stand by that line probabilistically. If they didn't have a combat trick or a lightning strike, that line very likely kills them in the next turn. Because we kill a blocker with Extinguish the Light, hit them to 1 life and attack with a Miria's Outrider, to where even if they top deck like a big creature that they play, we get in a position where we kill the big creature, shoot them to 1, make them chump block with the amplifier, and they have a 3/1 and a 1/1, and I'm at 7 life. I can block one of those the next turn too. Oh my god. But they drew a trick or a burn spell, which is the only play that punishes me for not holding up Extinguish the Light instead of playing the Outrider. Outrider is better against every other card except burn or removal. I don't know. I guess 3/1/1/1 3/2 when they cast it instant or sorcery. So we were dead to a removal spell off the top or a combat trick, and they basically drew a combat trick. We'll classify Lightning Strike as like +3/+0 combat trick. Most decks are going to have maybe 5 of those max. 26 cards left, 1 out of 5. If our opponent just drops a land, we're in a better position with the Miria's Outrider than we are holding up Extinguish the Light, and that's probably, let's see, 6. They only drew 6 lands all game. Okay, that's 6, so probably 11 still in there out of those 26. That's almost half the deck, and if they draw any creature, Miria's Outrider is also better because they don't get an attack in that turn. I stand by that play. I think that was the best play, probabilistically. Because what's the alternative here? If I just held on to this Extinguish the Light, and they attack me for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on board, I'm probably not going to cast the Extinguish the Light still, and then I just die to Lightning Strike after combat damage. Or, because I wouldn't know if they drew Lightning Strike or a creature, if I held up Extinguish the Light, and they just drew a creature and attacked with everybody, if I wanted to play around Lightning Strike, I would have ended up shooting one of their creatures gaining 3, and then they just drop whatever bigger, better creature, and I can't kill it anymore. Yep, I think this was the better line. This was just the percentage of the time where that line gets punished instead of the other line. And again, the other line, I feel like the other line still gets punished. Because if my opponent's attacking me for 5 on board with a G2 amplifier, I'm like, well, if they play any instant or sorcery, I'm going to die here. And it could be some kind of trick or something. So I think in that position, I would almost just be like, okay, I'm just going to wait till they cast their instant sorcery and then respond with Extinguish the Light. Right? Because then I can kill whatever they use the trick on to try to find lethal, so especially if they use it on like Amplifier or something, I can really get them. So I would probably play more around a Combat Strike than a Lightning Strike there, and again, just die to Lightning Strike, even if I went for the other line. Bad beats. Bad beats for sure. 3 life payment on Cruelty of Gix really costing us. But yeah, we stopped 3 damage with Outrider, so if we went for the line that involved not putting an Outrider on the board, and then they do 3, 4, 5, straight up put us to 2, and then Lightning Strike. I guess actually no, the Extinguished Light, because of the life gain, we would be at 1 life, right? No, we'd be at 3 life. Gains 3? Yes. I am very much overthinking this, but that's because there's nothing else to do. It's the final game of Magic. We're 3-3, I guess. Which is fine. It's whatever. It's just a little sad. I thought this deck was a little better than that, but definitely happens. We'll stop overthinking it now. We'll get out of the gameplay there. But I suppose actually holding up Extinguish the Light because of the life gain attached to Extinguish the Light would have survived that turn, but there are still all the factors against it, like I was saying, where I think that just playing Outrider is better against such a high portion of their deck that I should still just do it. But it is worth noting I was wrong when I said that I would just die if I held up Extinguish the Light as well. I wouldn't. Because of the life gain on it, I could use the life gain in response to the Lightning Strike. Brutal stuff. 3 and 3. Take one more look at the deck real quick. Thought the deck was pretty sweet. Niall was a bit of an underperformer. We never got to do anything with her. She was always too slow and just kind of got killed before anything happened. Same with Rada. Definitely unimpressed by those cards in this deck this time around. Everything else was pretty solid. We never got to use Urg, never even got to draw Urg, so that was a little sad. Fire NATO was very not great, but you do what you gotta do. Play some of that filler removal. Pretty much everything else was sweet. Love the dual lands. Tachiova was insane. Maro's insane. Miria's Outrider's insane. Bone Rattle's insane. Bunch of pretty great stuff. These were the 3 underperformers that I'd probably lower a bit in my card evaluation after this draft. But yeah, that is the end of today's draft. That's the end of today's video. I hope you enjoyed that video as much as I enjoyed playing it, or preferably a little more. Definitely a little salty this time around. Little bit of stuff that I don't find particularly fun, playing against the same card many matches in a row, playing against so many Tachiovas. Excuse me. Playing against so many Tachiovas was a little dull, a little boring in my opinion. And, of course, getting punished so hard for the line that I took in the last game feels super bad. But it definitely happens. So, other than that, as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon for some more Magic Arena.